And then he developed a methamphetamine problem. But he was on probation, so...
Which is why I'm so skinny.
It hasn't been a long-term methamphetamine problem, but it's relatively recent. So I'm the probation officer. Mark didn't come to the last appointment, so I spent a bunch of time on the phone trying to track him down. And then Mark comes in, and he tests positive for drugs. So it's like, Mark, what's going on? You know, what's up with a positive drug test?
Well, it won't happen next time.
I'm sorry?
Well, it won't happen next time. I mean,
Okay.
I can stop this stuff anytime
Okay.
I want to.
Okay, good, very good. Okay, how's everything else going in your life?
Not bad. Not bad.
All right? I'm going to see you 1 month from today, same time, same station, see what happens. 1 month later, Mark comes in. Positive drug test again. Mark, what's going on? We talked about this last time.
Did we?
Yeah, we did. Because you weren't here the time before, but we did talk about it last time. And,
Oh, yeah.
you know, Mark, come on. You know, if this keeps up, next year you might go back in front of Judge Lee, you know, and you could go to prison then. So what's going on, Mark?
Well, I certainly don't want to go to prison, so I'll try and get it under control.
Okay, well,
I'll see you next
you may
month.
have to go to treatment. You do understand that.
Oh, come on, that's not. I mean, I can quit the stuff anytime I want to.
Okay, well, you're going to have to come and test clean the next time.
Okay.
Okay.
For sure.
A month later, I'm over there. God, he didn't show up. He doesn't show up that day. I'm again calling on the phone, can't get a hold. Finally, I get him, 3 days later. Mark, you had your appointment 3 days ago. Where were you?
Oh, was that? I thought that was next Tuesday.
No. It was this past Tuesday.
Oh, yeah, I knew it was Tuesday.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, what is the one common denominator in spite of missed appointments, dirty drug tests? What is the one common denominator? What is the practical effect of these violations? Nothing. And this continues on. There's nobody to blame. The probationer is not complying with things. And even if the probation officer, if I'm sitting there thinking to myself, okay, Mark has missed 2 appointments and he's missed 2 dirty drug tests. If I write up a motion to revoke probation and send it to the judge is going to look at this and say, you want me to send this person to prison for 5 years for this? You know, get out of here. That's not going to happen. So what I say to myself is, well, I'm going to keep building up a track record for Mark. And if this continues, maybe next year, I will file a motion to revoke. And then I'll have a good case and convince Judge X that Mark ought to go to prison. And that is the reality in Hawaii and across the country. It's nobody's fault. I have 180 clients that I am supposed to keep track of as the probation officer. And as one judge put it, I have 2 choices. I can either send them to the beach or send them to prison. It's all or nothing. And that's what got me started in thinking, this is a crazy way to change people's behavior. And so what would change somebody's behavior? And I thought, well, what do I do with my son? Now, I'll take the fifth on any specifics, but if he does something wrong, I'm going to talk to him and I'm going to give him a consequence right away, whatever it is. Video games, take it away. When he was a little kid, I'm not going to read to you tonight. Oh, no, that type of thing. That is what would change. But you give a swift and certain consequence and you talk to them, but you've got to follow through with it. And that really is the genesis of it. This is the simplest idea that is complicated to actually get it done. And the fact of the matter is, I sat down, I looked at the statutes, and I saw motions to revoke, same section dealt with motions to modify. Up until that point, modifications were adding a heretofore undiagnosed mental health problem, or defense counsel would bring a motion to let their client go work in California for 6 months. Well, what I thought is, we're going to modify probation by giving somebody a few days in jail. and then going back to see their probation officer. Now, how would we accomplish that? I learned in setting up weed and seed programs in Hawaii. I got to know Marlene Beckman and the folks at the Department of Justice at the time in doing that, that when the U.S. attorney calls somebody on the phone, when they get over discovering they're not being investigated, they are very happy to coordinate with you and help you work on any problem. And, it's the same kind of thing as a judge. So I talked to a probation supervisor who seemed like she might be open to trying something new. Because our probation officers they're all learning motivational interviewing. They're all learning to give the level of service inventory revised. They're tremendously busy. So when I talked to the head of probation, he was not thrilled about me trying to start a new program. So he suggested to me, let's get the Attorney General's office involved. They can keep statistics because we're trying to do what works. And he retired the year after that, but I always suspected that he was thinking, well, we'll keep the stats, and that will show this stuff does not work, and I can get this judge out of our hair. Well, I then brought in, so I talked to the probation supervisor, then brought in a prosecutor supervisor and the public defender. And I said to the prosecutor supervisor, Kevin Takata, can you design a new form? Right now, the motions to revoke probation take hours for the probation officer to pick up and to write out. But can you design a short form that's filling in the blanks so they can do it in 5 minutes? Tested positive for blank on blank. Did not show up for an appointment with a probation officer on blank. Failed to go to treatment at blank. They could do it in 5 minutes. The public defender then said to me, the rules are going to be the same, but you're actually going to enforce them for the first time. Can you, warn our guys about this? And I said, that seemed to make sense from a due process standpoint and a fairness standpoint. So he said, fine, we will warn them. I then went to speak to the folks at the jail and said, you are not going to notice this at first. We're trying a new program. We got a lot of people coming back and forth to the jail, to the court. So they said, call us when you get busy, and we'll pay attention at that point. I then knew that warrant service gets the lowest priority for police. And part of that is if we were all cops, we'd want to probably go out and arrest today's criminal and not somebody that, we arrested that guy 3 years ago and then turned him over to the court system, and now you want us to keep working on this? But I talked to, since we did start a HIDA when I was there, I spoke to Larry Burnett, who's the HIDA chief there, explained what I wanted to do. He said, this is great. We want to do more than just arrest people. So he said, let me call the U.S. Marshal. He called the U.S. Marshal. I met with the Marshal. They agreed to serve all the warrants from my courtroom. So I got a wanted poster, had it laminated, and ready for the warning hearing. And then I talked to a bunch of different folks. I talked to the sheriffs to say, we got to try something new. If you guys are up for it, naturally, we're starting with this high-risk group. Their office is located about 6 blocks from the courthouse. So if somebody tests positive for drugs, I want them arrested at the office. That means a couple of sheriffs have to get in a car, drive over, take them into custody, take them to cell block. And they said, we're willing to give something new a try. Now, this is where my background in law enforcement, I think I had credibility there. They knew I'm not wasting their time. I'm not asking them to do something to find another way not to hold people accountable. So they were willing to try something new. I think everybody involved in this enterprise worked. We're willing to do that. So how does it work? Any violation of probation is going to lead to an immediate arrest or an arrest as soon as possible, and then a hearing 2 business days later. So if they come in and see the probation officer and they test positive for drugs, they're arrested on the spot, taken to the cell block, taken to jail. We have a hearing 2 business days later. The PO sends us a template filled out information with when the person was put on probation, when the warning date was, any prior violations, what the sanctions were, what the probation plan is. The probation officer is the one who initiates the report. That's why it can be done really quickly. We get it, my staff, and hands it out to the attorneys. 2 business days later, we have the hearing. Some months into this, we started a drug test hotline. So every weekday morning, all of these folks that have a drug issue as a condition of probation, which is probably 80% of our probationers, have to call this drug test hotline. It's randomly going to put colors on the hotline. When they start, it's at least once a week, sometimes 2 days in a row. If their color is listed, they have to come to the courthouse that morning to get drug tested. This is the way it has turned out is that's how a lot of these guys organize their day. First thing in the morning, they call the hotline. If they have to come in, they come in then. It reminds them they're on probation, and they can organize their day around this. So the whole idea is to try to tie in the consequence to the bad behavior. And a bunch of the folks we've worked with do not come from a structured life where this has really ever happened to them before. I am absolutely convinced of it. And if they can't see their probation officer regularly or come in for drug tests regularly, there's no way in the world they're going to hold a job where you have to show up every day on time at the same time. So in some cases, we're doing rehabilitation. In others, we're doing habilitation. It is a way to provide structure to a lot of these folks' lives. So on October 1st of 2004, we had a warning hearing. We picked all the folks at this high-risk group that had been sentenced by our courtroom, mostly by my predecessor. So we ended up having 18 sex offenders at 8:30 and then 16 drug offenders at 10:30. And I told them, you're on probation. That means you weren't sent to prison. The judge believed you could make it on probation. I can guarantee you everybody in this courtroom wants you to succeed on probation. But you have not been cutting it. So from now on, you're going to have to follow all of the rules of probation. If you don't, you're going to go to jail. So if you don't show up for a probation appointment, a warrant gets issued that day. Wanted poster. The folks that make all these arrests are going to come and arrest you. It's embarrassing. People can get hurt. So even if you screw up, come in anyway. Turn yourself in. Because I'm not going to sanction you as much as I will if we have to use law enforcement resources to arrest you. We're trying to create a culture of responsibility and following through with it. Something as simple as I tell them, if you have an appointment with your probation officer on a Thursday, now you do have a calendar. No, well, I can guarantee you everybody else in this courtroom has a calendar, and we don't go to jail if we miss an appointment. So get a calendar and write down your appointments. But if, say you're helping a friend move and you forget all about your probation appointment, well, if Thursday night you remember it, well, that's a decision point for you. If you turn yourself in Friday morning, you're going to get taken into custody. They're going to drug test you. If you're clean, that's good. Hearings are set 2 business days later. So that hearing will be on Tuesday. I'll probably give you credit for time served because it means you had a decision to make and you handled it responsibly. On the other hand, if you decide, I'm going to jail anyway, I might as well party, you're going to get arrested sooner or later, and then I'm going to give you more time. So the whole idea with HOPE is we want you to be successful, but you have to follow through with what the procedure is. Now, we started this in October 1 of 2004. We started to get great results. The hotline confirmed it. I don't know, it was May or June. You know, during that spring, we were looking around the country to see, are other places doing this kind of thing? And somebody from the Attorney General's office came into one of our monthly meetings that we had to iron out difficulties and said, you got to read what this guy has been writing about. And it was a monograph Mark Kleiman had done. So I looked through this, and it's like, wow, this guy has been thinking about this for a long time. So I call him up, and I say, oh, Mr. Kleiman, my name is Steve Alm. I'm a judge in Hawaii. And he goes, now, what are you doing? I said, yeah, I briefly explained. He goes, well, that's great. Well, give me a call in a year. Tell me how things are going. And part of his article did talk about this has never been done in a big scale. Occasionally, there are a few judges that try to do this stuff in their own courtroom, but it never seems to lead anywhere. So by the end of the year, I called him up, and he said, now, what's going on? I said, well, we've got 100-plus folks in the program. Positive drug tests are down 86%. Missed appointments are down 80%. And we're going to go to the legislature for some more money. So he got very interested at that point. Started asking a lot of good questions and then came out for a visit to check it out. I went to the police chief and I said, I kind of had a discussion like we're having now with him, and I said, the Fugitive Task Force is serving the warrants for my courtroom now. We're going to expand to the other judges. Can you help us out to serve some warrants? A lot more warrants. He goes, so the idea is you've got these thousands of people on probation. They're committing a lot of the crime out there. If we can put upfront resources into doing this, then down the road we're not going to have to investigate the burglary or the car theft. I said, that is exactly what the hope is. So I said, how about it? He goes, well, let's see if you get the money from the legislature first. So they gave us $1.2 million, $770,000 for drug treatment spots, 4 POs, 3 drug testers. So we have $25,000 a year clerks doing all the drug testing. So the POs don't have to do that anymore. And one of my absolute mantras in life is, if you have an idea that works, you've got to expand. That's the only thing that makes sense. So I talked to the other judges. They agreed to give it a try. It started in all 10 felony judges' courtrooms. It grew throughout the year. Issues came up. It's looking at an old creaky system and trying to make it work better. Once it expanded, the sheriff said, we're having to take these guys to book them, and the location is kind of far away. If this really expands, that's going to really put a hurt on us. And I looked at the statutes, and I thought about it. I talked to a couple other judges, and then I told them, I realize you've been doing this for 100 years, but you don't need to book them anymore. They're not being charged with a new offense. They're being charged with a violation of probation on an existing offense. So if you want to book them for your own purposes, that's fine. I suggest you keep a log to know who's in your custody. And if they don't appear for an event and a bench warrant's issued, as soon as they're picked up, they call my staff, we recall the bench warrant and put the bail on the underlying offense. So there's not a contempt charge. There's no need to book. So they stop booking. There's so many different ways you can do things that you just take a fresh look at it and you can solve that kind of problem. And that's what they did. Now, Marlene Beckman and Jake Horowitz from the National Institute of Justice came out at the time, went around and talked to the different folks, and have been great supporters ever since. Angela Hawken, Mark had found, she was the principal cost-benefit analysis researcher of Prop 36. She got involved and started a random control trial. Mike Jimenez, the president of the CCPOA, the guard union in California, I saw at a conference and I said, you got to hear about this program. So he flew out. So when they were there, he and Mark Kleiman were talking to the probation officers, and they were talking to a couple of offenders. And I went down to collect them so we could go eat lunch. So I walk into a room, and this guy's sitting at the end of the table. He's like out of central casting. It's probably 250, 300 pounds, shaved head. He's talking about how, he's changed his life. He's now connected with his family. He's not using drugs anymore.